Let's talk about Spider-Man's sister, Teresa Parker. One day, Pete is randomly getting abducted by a bunch of armed men in a helicopter, not as Spider-Man, but actually as Peter Parker. Now, he's saved by this woman who claims to be his sister. Now, take in mind, Richard and Mary died when Pete was about 1 year old, so obviously he's not buying it, and he's immediately thinking it's Chameleon or Mysterio or some bullshit. He asked Pete if he knew that his parents were CIA agents, and of course he says yes, and she said that she didn't know that up until a week ago. See, all she knew was that she was adopted. She's had this one picture of her birth parents her entire life. Now, obviously, you can't tell, but this is supposed to be Richard and Mary. Also, she's a CIA agent, just like her mom and dad. Through her job, she just found out that the children of Richard and Mary Parker are in quite a bit of danger. Turns out that years ago, Richard and Mary came across this Hydra vault storing all kinds of gold and a very dangerous robot. To make sure that nobody could ever access it, Pete's dad changed the coding on the lock to make sure it would only recognize the genetics of him. But because of that, his children are in a lot of danger. It would turn out that Kingpin's the one behind all this. He's the one who wanted to get Peter Parker there to open the vault because his genetics are close enough. And by using the powers of Mentallo this entire time, the whole thing with Teresa was a complete illusion. She had no idea. Her real name is Teresa Durand. Mentallo was leaving psychic suggestions to make her look a little more like Peter and their parents, made the picture look like it actually had their parents in it. It was all just a very clever ruse to get Peter Parker there. He had planned to use Teresa as a bargaining tool with Peter Parker, but once he realizes that Pete is Spider-Man, he knows Spider-Man's not going to let anybody die, so he reveals all of this to him and threatens to kill Teresa if he doesn't open the vault. So he opens the vault, this giant Hydra robot comes flying out of it, causing the building to collapse around them. Pete destroys the robot before it can do any real damage to the nearby city, and Teresa takes out all of Kingpin's henchmen. And fed up with the mistreatment from Kingpin, Mentallo turns on him and kind of fries his brain a little bit, causing him to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Here's the interesting part about all this, though. During this entire journey, trying to piece everything together, Peter and Teresa went and visited one of their parents' old, CIA buddies. After Pete and Teresa had left, he had took some of her DNA and ran an analysis on it, and it turns out she actually is the daughter of Richard and Mary Parker. Her and Pete are just left believing that that's not the case. Years later, she shows back up again asking for Peter's help. She tells him she joined this new agency called the Grey Blade. It's an offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D. Everything was going fine until she finds out about Project Twilight, which basically was them gathering information on every superpowered individual in the world with plans to take them down. So Teresa stole all this information, ran from the government agency, and went to the only person she thought that she could trust, Peter. After all of that gets resolved, a collective consciousness of AIs comes to destroy the Earth. I know that's a huge leap, but I don't have time to explain it. Now, in order to stop this threat, they need information that they can only find back in time as it has been destroyed. With the help of the current Iron Man, Victor Von Doom, he gives them a time platform and sends them back. In the past, Teresa meets up with the guy who recruited her in the first place, Nick Fury, and they go to the apartment of Richard and Mary Parker. And it's here that she finds a picture of her with her mother and a birth certificate proving that she actually is the biological child of Richard and Mary. Her and Pete get the information they need, go on to save the world from the AI robots. Now we see Teresa again later after her former S.H.I.E.L.D. partner and lover, David, was killed by the Chameleon. As she tracks the Chameleon down to kill him, this leads to this whole big thing where he's basically telling her her entire life is a lie, shows her things from her childhood and is trying to convince her that she has been a chameleon this entire time. Now, the Finisher and the Chameleon are wanting her to steal this device called the Clairvoyant for them. They're throwing out all of these possibilities that, she was actually the child of Richard and Mary, or maybe she was adopted and raised to be a chameleon her whole life, or maybe her parents were chameleons who had already assumed the identity of Richard and Mary Parker. So there's 1,000 things going on here. Even discrediting the picture she found that proved that she was their child. You also have to keep in mind that this just might be a very clever ploy to try and force her to do what they want her to, because her past is a big thing for her. We see her meeting up with Pete, getting the Clairvoyant off of him. She hugs her big brother and tells him how much that she loves him. Keep in mind that they've been through a lot together at this point. She decides just to destroy the Clairvoyant, not to take it back to the Chameleon. And there's a couple of reasons behind this. Obviously, she doesn't want to turn over this powerful device to the bad guys. She thinks it would destroy her. She found out that she herself was a chameleon. And in the end, she decides that it's not that important if she has a biological connection to Peter anyway. She tells herself that she is the daughter of Richard and Mary Parker. She is Peter Parker's little sister. Even though all that shit is really confusing, they've done this whole big, is she not thing with Teresa over the years, I think that it is a sweet message about the fact that you don't have to be blood to be family.